Hello, Douglas
Hi.
Rushkoff. How are you today?
Okay,
Okay.
alone.
I'd like to introduce you, but first of all, I'd like to say hello to the audience. So we are at the Reeperbahn Festival in Hamburg, Germany, in the Future Playground, and this is the session with Douglas Rushkoff, and he is joining us remotely from New York in the United States. Due to Corona reasons, he decided, or we decided together, it might be okay to have him with us as a digital version of himself, but it's the real one, I promise. Are you the real Douglas? Yes, you're real. Lovely. And so we decided upon having a more of an interactive session. So I'd like to start with some introductory words and then pass it over to him, and then we see where that leads us. But this being not a talk or a keynote, because you know you've seen him in keynotes and he can give amazing keynotes, I'm aware of that, but we decided to have it a more fluent approach towards that. In that regard, so without further ado, this is Douglas Rushkoff, one of the, I would say, greatest thinkers we have, coming from a very human standpoint of view, because there are thinkers who have a very distant view on reality, and Douglas, if you read his books or listened to his talks or watched his videos, has a rather optimistic and I would say rather human way of looking at things, and this is a very German way. Douglas, I would describe you as a proper Mensch. You know the term Mensch? Mensch is a Jewish word for human, and it's so much more than human. A Mensch is a person who is engaged and in contact with the reality that is. And this could be my first question. So your newest book, your actual book, is called Team Human. So this is team, I'm team. Can you see me, or do you just hear me?
I just hear you.
You just hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm showing to the camera my badge, and it says team on it, and I'm human, so I'm Team Human, and this is the name of his newest actual book. And I would start with the question: if there is such a thing like the Team Human, what's the score for the Team Human?
Well, we're still here, so it's 1-0.
Good.
It's interesting. I mean, the problem is the team part. You know, there's humans. There's some humans, but I feel like we're losing touch with the team. You know, I just came upon some old cassette recordings I had of when I was hanging out with Timothy Leary in Los Angeles in the 80s. He's actually up there. That's Leary at his home, about the age when I was really good friends with him. And he just read the book Media Lab by Stuart Brand, which was about the very new undertaking at MIT in Boston called the Media Lab, started by Nicholas Negroponte. And he was disappointed in it. I remember when he was finished, he threw the book across the room. And first thing he said was, less than 3% of the people named in the index are women. That's how you know they have a problem. And it was interesting, even back then, he understood that problem. And what he said was, these guys want to use technology to recreate the womb. You know, the womb inside the woman. He said they feel like they didn't get enough from their mothers. You know, Timothy Leary was a psychologist, that their mothers couldn't anticipate their needs when they were babies. You know, baby would cry and the mother brings the bottle or the blanket or to change. You know, the mother never knows exactly what the baby wants. And that he thought that these guys were building technologies in order to recreate a womb in which they could sit in alone, and the computer would bring to them whatever it is that they would want. The computer would be smart enough to anticipate their needs and bring it to them. You know, whether it's a guy in an Uber bringing a pizza, or a algorithm knowing what porn to bring them, or you know, whatever would come to them. And that they were creating this sort of using technology as a way to disconnect from the rest of the world and sort of rise above I remember Terence McKenna used to talk about human consciousness could rise from matter, rise from the chrysalis of matter as pure consciousness.
Yes.
So it was these white boy technologists who wanted to use technology in order to somehow escape from the rest of us, whether it's the billionaires like Musk and Bezos who are going to build rocket ships and shelters to get away before climate change, or these guys who will get an Oculus Rift and put it on their head and have a safe zone inside their virtual reality playground. That technology was used instead of for connecting us, it became this way of isolating and separating us.
Super weird. Can I ask something?
Yeah.
But it sounds very strange that womb idea locks us into an infinite baby boy situation. Like, it's not something you should strive for.
You would think not, but interestingly enough, Joey Ito, who I like, he was one of the heads of the Media Lab more recently. He started an organization he called neoteny. And neoteny is this Latin word, I guess, for the idea that the longer the babyhood, the childhood of a species, the more evolved they are. A horse can get up and walk on the first day, and the dog can take care of itself pretty soon, but a human, is 10, 12, 13 years old before a human could take care of itself. So there's an idea that these guys had that the longer you're an infant, that the longer you're a baby, the more advanced you are. But they all had some very strange ideas about evolution. They even looked at human beings as one temporary stage in the evolution of information towards higher states of complexity. So if you talk to the chief scientist at Google, Ray Kurzweil, he argues that human beings are temporary, that we need to pass the evolutionary torch to our computer successors, and
but do we
let
want
them.
That? Do we actually want that?
I don't want that. That's why I was in an argument with him, and I made a big argument that why human beings deserve a place in the digital future, that human beings are weird, that we can, a human being can watch a David Lynch movie and not understand what it means and still experience that as pleasure.
Yeah.
A robot can't do that. And I said, human beings, we should make a place. The robots need to keep us here. And Ray Kurzweil said to me, he said, "Oh, Rushkoff, you're just saying that because you're a human, right? Like it's hubris." But that's when I came up with the idea for Team Human. That's when I said, fine, okay, I'm guilty. I'm on Team Human, And I don't mean that to the exclusion of the animals and the birds and the bugs and the trees, but that we deserve a place, as well. That biology, life deserves a place. I think.
But isn't it weird that somebody like you needs to speak up and say, okay, we have the birthright on that planet to still be here? Isn't that a strange situation? I mean, isn't it?
Isn't it? But that's
it
the
should
same
be clear.
thing that
should be
it's
super
the same
clear.
thing that indigenous peoples argued to Westerners as we took over, America and killed the natives and enslaved the Africans. Wait a minute, it's like, no, you don't deserve a place. So what we've done is we've taken that same program, that same ideology about our right to vanquish and exploit other people and places. We taught it to our machines, and now our machines are doing it to us. And so now, finally, you see some white Western men like me saying, oh, wait a minute. Maybe this exploitation thing.
Something went wrong, terribly wrong. Shit. But this is strange. Like the way you describe it, we tried to build something which gave us the security and the feeling of being fed and cared for and loved and dark and cozy. And now we are kind of pretending it's still there.
Yeah, but the problem is that the impulse to do that was not really a good impulse. And that's what a lot of my work was looking at. why did we move that way? Because it's funny, I was looking at one of the music performances from last night at the festival, and I got this wave of, and I know we don't like the word anymore, but I still do. I got a wave of nostalgia for the early 1990s rave.
Oh.
You know, I mean, you guys had Love Parade and all that. Remember those days? I mean, Love
Yeah.
Parade probably is still there, but the early techno, when you know, from Kraftwerk until maybe 1994, there was this, you know, when you would go to a rave, and whether you took ecstasy or not, the technology seemed to be a new way to synchronize and connect with all these other people. And the early internet felt more like a fractal or a psychedelic experience or a vision quest. It was organismic and wet, and there were women and intimacy and beating hearts, and it was, you know what I mean? It was,
I hear you.
it was an intimate, physical, lovely, sexual, ecstatic experience. And it was the opposite of what these guys wanted to do. So the reason why Leary was so upset when he read the Media Lab book, it's like, no, this isn't what we were talking about when we decided we all loved these tech and we wanted to use tech to promote new human potentials. We saw technology as this new connective thing. It was a way of realizing the colonial organism, you know, the new connected organismic human species, the one mind, the Gaian, you know, we were going to be the brain of Gaia and connect everything together. But these guys came from a different tradition. The technologists, they came from the scientific tradition. And if you look at the origins of the modern scientific tradition, it goes back to Francis Bacon in Europe in the 1600s. When he was saying that science, he was really considered the forefather of science, of the scientific method. He said that science would allow us to take nature by the forelock, hold her down, and submit her to our will. So science is a rape fantasy, a way of controlling nature.
Hold on. That's great. Did you say science is a rape fantasy? Oh my God.
It was for Francis Bacon. What is hold nature down by the hair and submit her to our will? What is that? Right. So science is a way, you know, nature is scary and dark and wet, and there's roots and dirt and fairies and mushrooms and women and dreams and feelings. Right. So white Western guys with tech, we could get rid of all that. You know, I can rebuild mother without anything wet, without any blood, without any, you know, just like a nice, clean robot girl.
Wow, yes. Like a decent version, finally a decent version of the mother who never leaves you. You don't have to leave her ever. She does what you want every time.
She's predictable, right? And that's the other big thing we went for. You know, in the early days of the internet and technology, these technologies made people less predictable. There was change happening, new possibilities, new strange mutations of culture. And when business came along, they thought, no, rather than using these technologies to make people less predictable, what if we use these technologies to make people more predictable? And that's what all of the surveillance capitalism behavioral control is about, using Facebook and Twitter and all those things to do captology, to do, you know, cognitive and behavioral control on humans.
But when did we lose track? I mean, it sounded like a good idea in the beginning somehow.
I know. That's funny. This sounds like a good idea at the beginning. That's what my grandmother was. My grandmother was a Marxist, a Stalinist in the early 1900s. And I said, Grandma, how could you be a Stalinist? He killed 20 million people. And she says, it sounded like a good idea at the time. You know, at the early, I mean, it did. The workers, you know, of course it sounded good, you know, until they started cutting off the heads. You know, where did we go wrong? I've tried to pinpoint the moment, you know, and it's hard. One moment where we went wrong was when Mark Andreessen, the founder of Mozilla, which became Netscape, it was a nonprofit browser. It came out of the university system. The day that he brought Netscape public, he had the IPO to list it on the stock exchange as a big for-profit company. It was the same day that Jerry Garcia, the guitarist for the Grateful Dead, the same day that he died. And I know it's a coincidence, but to me, that seemed like the moment that we left behind the Grateful Dead, rave, 1960s, you know, Genesis P. Orridge, throbbing gristle, craft work, crazy rave values.
Douglas, I have to do some translation for the German audience.
Okay.
Is everybody aware of Grateful Dead, the band, what they stand for? Like very long concerts going on for hour after hour, and it's more of an immersive experience. It's not the proper band coming on stage playing 10 songs and saying goodbye. So it's more of an, yeah, how would you explain it?
It was, well, for me, it was also like the heart of the late 1960s values, the Woodstock value system.
Yeah.
So the internet, the early internet, was characterized by those 1960s psychedelic values. Stuart Brand, who helped start The Well, one of the first online bulletin boards, he was one of the merry pranksters who traveled with Ken Kesey in a bus on the west coast of the US doing acid.
Oh,
so it was the early net was a very psychedelic culture. And it felt like the day that the net became about money was the day that one of the great psychedelic musical figures of the 1960s died. And it felt to me that that spirit, because the early internet companies, they used to hire psychedelics people to be their programmers. You would always see, they were called deadheads. It was like ravers, but before rave, deadheads would wear tie-dye t-shirts and psychedelic glasses, and they were into paisley and fractals, and they would work at Intel or Apple during the day and go home and drop acid at night, or do DMT and have crazy trips. And that's because the psychedelics kids were the only people who were comfortable hallucinating our future reality. These technologies were so new. They were really scary to regular people because anything you imagine, you could behold. So these were very imaginative, open-minded people who were at companies like Apple building the Macintosh, who could imagine these new spaces for humanity. But then around the mid-90s, you know, Wired magazine came around, and Wired, which originally came out of Holland in some ways, but Wired magazine said, no, this is not about psychedelics. This is about money, that you're going to make a lot of money. This is an investment opportunity, not a mind expansion opportunity. And they really pushed all of us kind of psychedelic, artsy, musical, leery people, pushed us to the side and put, you know, business and military and surveillance and advertising and capitalism at the center of the story. And we really weren't able to take it back.
So now is the moment we need the microphone, and you can use this microphone, and you can have a sip of your coffee. I see that. So now we're handing the microphone into the audience.
Thank you very much, first of all, that you're talking to us today. I'm very honored. I do have to admit that when I listen to you right now, it, in a sense, sounds like conservatism, like that you're like thinking back and like good old times and all that. And so what I've been thinking about recently is that a lot of young people, like I'm 19, so people of my age, they also adopted this progress thinking, this narrative that you kind of described with Elon Musk and all these people who are trying to send Amazon packages through the universe and whatever. And so but I do get in a sense that this is like a sexy narrative. And so my question is, how can you, at least for some people, my question is, how can you get young people to buy the I would, in some ways, that maybe now appearing conservative mindset of saying no, we're losing too much on the way to that thing. So how can you get people to not have Elon Musk as their role model, but rather think about things like sustainability and other really important issues that we face today?
Well, I mean, I look at Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, well, not Musk as so much, but certainly Jeff Bezos and the Google guys. I look at them as reactionary and us as the true progressives, that they are using technology to prevent progress. Because real progress, real moving forward, is increasing the intimacy between human beings. It's whenever we get too close to each other, they try to put obstacles and barriers to prevent that real mixing, that real intimacy. You know, the pursuit of real pleasure in the moment is not scrolling through TikTok. You know, the TikTok is a substitute for touching somebody, for fucking somebody, for just breathing together. It's funny, the word conspiracy from the Latin conspire means spire is breathe, con is with. It means to breathe with someone else. That to just breathe together is the real conspiracy. So the trick to activating this deeply progressive, forward-thinking, truly forward-thinking instinct is to get people breathing together. And that's why music is so important, right? When we understand music not as this MP3s coming through earbuds, you know, in your isolated electronic, you know, bubble as you walk through the street. Music is something that comes through speakers and hits your body. Music is something that moves through the air. Music is something that allows multiple people to resonate at the same time. You know, that's why live music, I'm so sad about COVID here, but live music is, you know, maybe the most powerful tool that we have to engender this sensibility when you come in the room, because live music is really more than melody or anything. Live music is the experience of resonance. And once you experience that resonance with the other bodies, you understand, oh, this is, you know, this is the deep pleasure. This is what we're actually after. So yeah, I think I understand why it sounds regressive, but what I'm talking about really is not going back, but retrieving and bringing forward those great moments from history when we had ecstatic experience together, and figuring out how do we bring that forward. The future of ecstatic experience is not a bunch of us wearing Oculus Rifts, you know, in a virtual thing. The future of ecstatic experience is sharing space together again. And that is weird, progressive, dangerous stuff. It's eye contact. When you make eye contact with someone else and breathe with them, then your mirror neurons flash, the oxytocin goes through your bloodstream, and you have the bonding hormones, you know, come to play, rather than these stress hormones that most of us that are triggered when we're using virtual devices.
But this is such a crazy moment in time, because what you've been describing, the idea of creating intimacy and the resonance moment, at the very same time seems to be challenged in a way we would have never thought of. So right now we are at a festival, we have a tent here full of people, but everybody has a distance of roughly 2 meters in between them. So what we need most, contact, intimacy, seems to be the most dangerous thing right now. And this is a hard thing to struggle with. So next to our tent is the big stage. There's going to be a concert after you, and that stage can cater for 800 people, but 800 people with a distance of 2 meters in between feels super weird. So we're kind of simulating the festival experience on one hand. On the other hand, we're not allowing people to touch. It's really crazy. What is your stand on that? Is it like,
Well, it's crazy and awful, but this is a taste. This is a test of
yeah,
what it would be like if we don't change our ways. This is a beautiful and necessary warning from the universe. You know, you're fucking up here. We are fucking up. We are going to lose access to each other if we don't stop. In America, you know, the West Coast is burning down. We have COVID here, where we're dealing with the legacy of slavery and race oppression in the US. And Fukushima is still pouring out radiation. We don't talk about it anymore because it's not news. It's just happening. So yeah, the things are crumbling, and it's like, how many signs do we need to convince us that, you know, growth-based corporate capitalism is not the answer, that you can never, ever earn enough money to insulate yourself from everybody else. The only choice you can have is to make the world a place that you don't need to shield yourself from it. And, you know, how do you learn to take off your shoes again and walk through the world without fear of soil? You know, so I feel like in some ways this is the gentlest way for nature to communicate with its human children and say, look, you have lost the plot. You know, you've lost the plot. And it should, I don't know that it will,
so
but
yeah,
it should make us value what matters. I don't want to do Zoom anymore when this is done. I don't even want to do the
no,
internet anymore. I just want to, you know,
it feels,
enjoy
yeah.
people.
So you look at it, the crazy times we're in right now, kind of a tough love moment in which nature reaches out to us and takes us by the ear and says, come on, you can do better.
Well, in reality, and this is why we were so scared of nature, nature only knows tough love.
Hmm.
And nature only knows, whenever, that's how it is. The cheetah jumps on the gazelle, the vine pulls down the tree. You know, nature is tough. And the role of human beings as the most consciously aware, imaginative species is, it's our job to make nature less cruel, you know, to actually bring compassion into nature, and rather than being afraid of her, and rather than wanting to rape her, you know, it's it's to see, oh, there are ways to live in concert, in harmony with nature, and make the whole thing less cruel, you know, make the whole thing more harmonious. But, you know, we have to consciously choose to do that. And we have a choice how we react to COVID. And, you know, we either, in America, we'll either become more authoritarian, you know, or have a civil war, or we will learn how to unwind this thing. But what you're seeing in America, it's very interesting. What you're seeing in America is we've turned our colonialism on ourselves. You know, rather than colonizing Africa or Asia or South America, we are now colonizing ourselves with our own tools. You know, we are a banana republic. And in some ways, we are still the most advanced nation in the world. We're just the most advanced. We have the most advanced form of cancer, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Do you, how does it, I know it's a strange question, but how does it feel to be so advanced at the very same time as being so challenged right now? Because there's no other way of putting it. When the session before, we had two very famous journalists sitting here on stage with me, and we were describing the situation of the world at best as complicated. So they say they are lacking words to describe the situation. It's like the worst and most awkward descriptions don't even fit anymore. So it has gone batshit crazy. They can't describe it anymore. How would you describe the situation? Do Do you have any words for that?
I mean, sure. We are. I mean, for America, we are a negative role model. You know, we're a picture of what not to do. I mean, Europe
But we are
had
on the
more. You had more direct experiences of fascism and authoritarianism than we did.
we sure
So,
did.
you know, between Mussolini and Hitler and Stalin, we didn't really have that in America, not in a way that we understood anyway. So it looks like it's our turn to do that. You know, with Trump in America and Bolsonaro and all down in Brazil, it's sort of new world fascism is happening. But hopefully enough of us can see it and try to, you know, I just don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see whether or not the democratic process, the electoral process, is still functional in America. It might not be, in which case it's just sad. But I don't think America will blow up the world with atomic bombs. I think we'll just be just this terrible, polluting place for a few decades, and maybe, you know, hopefully come out of it. But
this is like we in Germany and Europe in general, we tend to look towards America with kind of a laugh gone wrong at some point, because we had so much love for most of the pop cultural products coming from your great country, and at the very same time it became a strange place to look to.
yeah,
But,
well, part of the beauty of America,
yeah.
the charm
Yes.
was we're magical thinkers.
Yes, so much. Yes.
You know, from Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz. He
Yeah.
was a theosophist. He was a follower of Madame Blavatsky. You know, it was like Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley and all of that magical thinking from Europe came to America as a prosperity gospel and think and grow rich and the habits of highly successful people. And Trump himself went to the church of Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote The Power of Positive Thinking. You know, it was, it's like The Secret was this big cult that spread around. The idea that if you think it, you can have it. And that's beautiful in a way, to think whatever you imagine will come. You know, it's pure magical manifestation. But it got to an extreme where we started to use magic to not look at what we just did. You know, we've never looked back at slavery, at inhumanity, at colonization, at all the things that we did. We just keep trying to look forward. And eventually that catches up with you. You know, so now it's like we have to grow up and go, okay, magical is cool to get yourself psyched up to win a ball game, but there's a real world out here too.
Well, there is a real world. Douglas, can we have another question? Is that okay?
Please.
Okay, please go ahead.
I very much understand what you mean, that when you're, or as far as I understand, you say that we kind of disconnect ourselves from what's really important when we spend our lives on social media and get all our stuff from Amazon and all these things where I would totally agree with you. On the other hand, I wonder, in a time, I find it interesting that you say that the coronavirus and its consequences is somewhat of a wake-up call, because a lot of people would say quite the opposite, in the sense that they say, okay, all these things are getting much more important right now and are getting deeper or connected to our everyday lives than ever. And so my question is, what is your advice for somebody who does worry about that, but at the same time notices that it gets much harder to actually connect with other people without relying on these technologies and using Google and using Zoom and doing all these things? So I feel like it's harder. It's getting harder and harder. And I wonder, what would your approach be?
Well, for me, this experience of living through Zoom and Amazon and grocery delivery and email is it reminded me of when I was a kid and my father found a pack of cigarettes in my jacket pocket. And I thought he was going to yell at me. And he says, no, I'm not going to yell at you. After dinner, come to the backyard. And after dinner, I met him in the backyard. He had the pack of cigarettes and he said, so you want to be a smoker? Smoke the whole thing. And I smoked maybe 4 of them. And then I was, throwing up. I was green. I was sick for it. Just, I still remember it. It was an awful feeling. And I feel like now it's like the internet said, oh, you want to be on Zoom all the time? You really think this is great? You don't want to leave your house? You want to just be on? All right, let's try that one. Now be on Zoom all day, 24/7 and see what happens. Now, I look at Zoom and I look at my face and I think, oh, I'm going to click on that thing that, makes your face look better, but it's already clicked, right? So this is me improved. I'm like, oh, fuck. So, I mean, for me, it's this sense of overdosing has made me want the real world ever all the more. When I look at kids now, they're having the high school kids in my town, because they have to be with masks and on Zoom and on this all the time, they're having secret parties in basements with 4 or 5 kids vaping together just to have, I mean, not that they should be vaping together in a basement, but I understand their urge is to reconnect in this other way. So my hope is that the extremely cloistered, isolated, high-tech loneliness that we're experiencing is going to make us want to do the real thing again. And we'll see, yes, there's tremendous utility value to a lot of these devices. I can do my faculty meeting with the faculty in my department on Zoom. We don't need to drive to that college to have that stupid meeting. So that's fine. But, again, it's back to Timothy Leary. He thought that the technology, the internet, would help us see real space as sacred. That when we're incarnate and with each other, it's this sacred, very high touch, different thing. And I think we're going to now become better at distinguishing between 3-dimensional flesh experiences and these 2-dimensional screen-based experiences, and cherish the one. Maybe more of our work will be on here. These are good for increasing our utility value, but they're bad for prana. They're bad for our tactile reality.
Did you say increasing our utility value?
Yeah. Makes us better workers. We have higher output. That's what these machines do. These machines are bad for intimacy. They're bad for looking at our total value. See, the easiest way I can say it is that my experience of the internet is the experience of being auto-tuned. Auto-tune is fine for, trying to make Madonna sound more like, Ariana, right? But it's not good for recording and transmitting human soul. James Brown, could you imagine auto-tuning James Brown as he's reaching up for the note, right? Or coming down in over the note? No, that's soul, right? Once we try to quantize James Brown, that's good for the utility value, right? Now we can, mail out a digital copy of the song or whatever, create the MP3, but you lose the essence, the stuff that doesn't fit, that's not here or there, but is in that weird liminal in-between space where humans actually live.
Music which is produced that way is usually very shallow, and there's no life in it. It's dead.
Unless it's intentional, unless it's craft work, and playing with just that. What is that? What does it mean if the note has to be here or there, or there? And then we as humans look at, oh, is that our future? And so where are we going to fit in around those quantized beats?
So we adapt to the machine in a way like the place the machine gives to us. Whoa, crazy.
Right. That's something I wrote about in Team Human as well, that in the early internet days, we were guilty of something they called anthropomorphism, where we treated our machines and our computers like they were people. You know, people would put little ears.
The word
Anthropomorphism. It's where it's where you change the machine into humans, where you see like a car has two headlights and you think of it as the eyes of the car and that's the face, where we see the human in it. Now it's the opposite. Now we're doing what I'm calling mechanomorphism, which is the human beings are identifying with the machines. What's my processing speed? How much RAM do I have? How do I optimize? I'm going to put on a Fitbit in order to, get my heart and my this and take supplements, and where we look at ourselves as computers, or I'm networking. You're not networking. What is that? So it's sort of that. It's this. When humans try to imitate machines, we lose, because machines are better machines than humans can be. What we need to do is to try to be the best humans we can be, and that's more like James Brown than it is like your
quantized music.
Yeah, than your garage, your garage band or
compressed,
whatever people are using now.
We have another question.
Thank you so much. I have a question. We heard a lot about what might go wrong with technology currently and the role that technology is playing in our planet and in the coexistence with human beings. Do you have any ideas, any visions of how we might achieve a different reality? Or differently said, what role should technology play in our society? And how maybe can we achieve it? What is the first step, or what is the plan? Like, do you have any idea about that?
Yeah, digital technology is good for long distance things. So a digital currency like a blockchain isn't good for local transactions between people who trust each other, but it is good for figuring out all the people that contributed to the manufacturing of a smartphone and making sure everyone gets paid and that there's a good global distribution supply chain. It could be good for getting coffee from Kenya to Germany and making sure that these beans are fair trade and you can trace their origins and make sure there were no slaves involved. They're good for big scaled long distance things and really bad for highly local things. And I think where we're moving toward, if we're smart, is a highly local production and exchange of most of what we need. Our food, our teaching, our healthcare. We can do that from our communities. And then our communities, though, can be networked with one another digitally. So if our community publishes books and that community makes children's playground equipment, and that community does this, almost like a world of many kibbutzes or cooperative enterprises that are small cottage industries that don't really need that much high tech in what they're doing, making beer, making clothes, making food in sustainable, regenerative, permaculture oriented ways, biodynamic ways, if we want to go to Steiner even. But they would get networked together. The way we would do the long distance facilitation would be with digital. The way I would do a talk or a conversation with you in Germany would be using this instead of using jet fuel. There's no need to bring my body all the way there just to do this. If I'm going to bring my body there, I want to do the whole fucking festival, right? It's to, I want to dance and get laid and do all the fun things, live. Then maybe there's a reason to come. But otherwise, yeah, it's distinguishing. What are these good for and what are they not? What is the right tool for the job. Digital is really good tool for long distance communication, for facilitation of giant things, and really bad for up close, for intimacy, for friendships, for local schooling, for all that stuff. So it's just figuring that out. And I think these experiences are doing that. I think parents, once COVID is over, parents are not going to want their kids looking at an iPad when they're in a classroom. You know, I think they're going to want to get rid of this really fast.
Great. We have another question.
So I'm a young creative working in the digital field in advertising, and I'm pretty interested in this part of like how we work in the digital field like later. So if you're open to that, I would love to make you a guessing. Like, how do you see us human beings later, like in 5 or like in 10-ish years, working in digital? I mean, we know there's VR and AR and stuff like that. So how do you see us programming our future life together with that?
Well, in advertising and marketing communications in particular, you know, for the most part, they've abandoned creative, what we used to call creative, in favor of behavioral modification, right? So most people doing UX, UI, and advertising are reading BJ Fogg and the behavioral design industry leaders rather than reading Jay Ogilvy or was it David Ogilvy or Ogilvy and Leo Burnett and
exactly.
the advertising.
100% true. Yeah.
The advertising greats. But I think now that people are becoming conscious of the fact that these technologies have behavioral control embedded in them, I think there will be a need for creative designers who develop experiences that people want to have, you know, that can create digital experiences of products and brands in other ways, that can have, you know, kind of brand conversations with people, whether they're nonfiction conversations about what a company is doing and how it's operating and who it's helping, or if they're fictional ones, like in a fashion brand about what is the real persona of the Chanel woman or the Nokia phone user or whatever it is. You can play in that space. But I think that we're going to retrieve that this, the sort of rats in a maze, Skinner box that they're requiring UX and UI people to do is, I certainly hope it's at its end, because we see where it takes us. You know, look at America. That's where it brings people. It puts people in that reptilian state. Their frontal lobe is gone. Their middle, it's all that brainstem, fight or flight, anxious activity. And that's not good for a long-term brand relationship, because they begin to associate the brand instead with the panic rather than the pleasure. So I think things bode well for those who look back at narrative, who read books like the, whether it's Joseph Campbell or what was the book by Eliade on return of the myth of eternal return. You know, start looking at that.
Again. What was the name of the book?
What was it? Isn't it The Myth of Eternal Return?
Can be.
Yeah, The Myth of Eternal Return. It's looking really at the idea that before linear time, you know, that indigenous people all had, you know, reincarnation and reenactment as part of their understanding of the cosmos, of how of how we live, that there's nothing new, nothing original, that everything is an echo of something else. So instead of, the sort of where American advertising left off on this is new, improved, the next thing and all that, that advertising will be more about telling stories that help people reconnect to the larger patterns of nature and life and feeling rather than it's because people are so disoriented now. They really, I think people do want to understand the larger cycles of which they are a part, rather than what is the edge of human experience.
So, Douglas, time flies when you're having fun. Where do we go from here? Like, interesting moment in time, Team Human is still there. It's kind of moved out from the infinite womp into a tough love world. We are realizing it's a beautiful planet, but it comes with a price. The price is, we have a responsibility. It's not a nice thing. So would you describe Team Human being more in the stage of early adulthood or puberty, or are we having our midlife crisis, or are we moving towards saying goodbye to it all?
Yeah, I would say it's puberty and adolescence. When you're a baby, you're connected to the mother.
Yeah. And
you just think everything is one. Then you experience your individuality, your identity. This is me. I'm here. It's me. And that's healthy, right? The kid learns to say no and experience their own ego and their own identity. But then right after puberty, kids go, oh, wait a minute, I want to be close to that one. I want to be close to that one, right? And they realize they're going to have to surrender some of the boundary that defines their individual identity in order to get to kind of be inside that one, or to have that one inside me. And that's where we are now as a species, I think, is that we're realizing, okay, we got to experience Western individuality, enlightenment, one man, one vote, freedom of the individual, personal autonomy, personal sovereignty, and all that. And it's reached its endpoint. Because either we're all going to be each alone in our own, Google stream of isolated digital safety, and we all die, or we're going to come out and try to find the others and try to actually touch and connect with other people and experience the dissolution of ego that goes along with actually connecting with another human being. That's called growing up. And I still believe we can do it if we decide that we want that more than to die as individuals.
So this is a nice way of looking at it, because puberty has so much power, so much potential, so much craving, and at the very same time, it's a moment of decision. You have to decide something at some point. And I would like to have the last question, and I thought of something because I'm looking at the audience now, and this could be the last question. And I thought, instead of asking you a question, Douglas, I would very much love you to ask a question to the audience, something they take home with them. They don't need to answer it now, but maybe the question could stay open, and some questions need to stay open as long as you still looking for the answer. So what would your question to the audience be? And then they could continue after we stop here.
I guess I would say, what is at stake? What do you have to lose by connecting with the other people in your immediate world? And because there are things that you'll lose, maybe about a certain kind of privacy or control or predictability. What are you going to lose by opening up in a real way to everybody else who's around you? And how can you substitute for those things that you're losing? if you're losing a sense of security or predictability or privacy or boundary, how can you support the parts of you that still need to feel secure and separate and individual or whatever it is? You know, how do we become more aware of what is driving our own fear of connecting that deeply with everybody else? And how do we service? How do we honor that part of ourselves? It's not something you just say, oh, don't think that way. You've got to honor that because that's there. That's part of us, right? So it's not a matter of just hating the white male tech bro in each of us, or the capitalist, or the privatist. It's a matter of really honoring that that's there, that's something that's been there protecting you, supporting you all this time. And we've got to figure out how to honor it if we want to move behind it. So that's the thing I always am asking myself. What do I have to lose here? And how do I satisfy that part?
Wow. So I look into the audience. I see people kind of nodding, which is a good sign. And nobody says, no, I can't possibly take that question, Mr. Rushkoff. So that felt kind of fluid, right? So we had the idea to keep it as a conversation. It worked out. So
see, live is always better than canned, right?
So, I mean, the audience now is in a lucky position. You can attend the concerts now. You can attend the main stage. The other stage is just starting. We hear music in the background. Beautiful. Can you hear the music already? No, you can't. No. So there's already some music. So, Mr. Douglas Rushkoff, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for being the mensch that you are. And dear audience, so you have the question. So if you ever met Mr. Rushkoff in real life, you can say, well, at least I have a tiny idea of the answer to the question you were posing to us. In that regard, thank you very much to New York. Thank you for enlightening us in a very lovely way. It was very caring. It felt very open and very optimistic, and we need these voices and we need these signposts right now. And in that regard, I bow to you. I said you are my brain crush. That's what I wrote in my media, and I think it was a very honest position for I was very kind of trembling before that, because speaking to somebody I like so much is always a challenge, but it felt really great. Thank you, dear audience, for being with us. You could have been at the concert already, but you're staying with us, and I hope it made up the expectations. Douglas Rushkoff, thank you very much. Dear audience, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.